The galaxy was quiet that night. In the endless dark between the stars, silence stretched like a living thing. No sound. No movement. Only the cold whisper of forgotten worlds drifting through space. And then, it came, a sound that broke the stillness. A signal. Weak, cracked, almost lost. It carried across light years, bouncing between dead satellites and drifting debris. A voice, full of fear and pain. This is the Threxian Alliance. We are under attack. Anyone who hears this, help us, please. The message repeated 3 times, then faded into static. For centuries, it traveled alone, until humans found it. The year was 3428. Humanity had spread far beyond Earth, building colonies and cities among the stars. The galaxy knew them by one name, the Deathworlders. The reason was simple. Humanity came from the deadliest planet known to any species. Earth was harsh, full of danger, storms, and predators. It had made them strong, tough, unpredictable. The kind of species that survived what others could not. When the human Deep Space Research Station Aurora Point caught the alien signal, the crew didn't ignore it. Most other species would have. A signal that old usually meant death. A trap. Or worse, a curse. But humans were curious, and sometimes, too brave for their own good. Captain Elias Corrin, commander of the station, stared at the audio file in silence. "Play it again," he said. The computer repeated the same broken plea. The captain frowned. That voice, it's not just a distress call. It's afraid of something. His first officer, Lieutenant Mara Dean, hesitated. "Sir, we should report it to Central Command. That's an ancient transmission. Could be a trap." Elias nodded slowly. "Could be. But if it's real and someone out there needed help," he looked out the viewport. The stars burned bright, endless and cold. "We can't just ignore it." Within hours, the order came down. The exploration cruiser Valkyrie would be sent to trace the signal. A small crew, experienced in deep space rescue and reconnaissance. The mission was simple. Find the source, check for survivors, and return. At least, that's what they thought. When the Valkyrie jumped through hyperspace, the crew joked to calm their nerves. It was a long journey to the coordinates, a dead region known as the Ghost Belt. No trade routes, no stations, no known life. Just dark stars and drifting rocks. As they approached the signal's origin, sensors began to pick up strange energy fields. It was like space itself was broken. Lieutenant Dean stared at her monitor. "Sir, I'm reading massive radiation spikes. Something happened here a long time ago." The captain's voice was quiet. "Bring us out of warp." The Valkyrie dropped into normal space. What they saw froze everyone in silence. A shattered world hung before them. The planet's surface was cracked open like glass, with molten rivers glowing beneath black clouds. Giant metal towers, half melted, reached into the sky like broken bones. Cities once full of life were now lifeless shadows. "Dear God," someone whispered. The crew scanned for life. Nothing. Until a faint heartbeat. One signal, deep inside the ruins. The humans landed near the source, wearing armored suits. The air was thick, full of ash and static. In the middle of a ruined structure, they found it, an alien, half buried under debris. Its skin was pale blue, its breathing shallow. When it saw the humans, its eyes widened in horror. You answered," it whispered. Captain Elias knelt beside it. "It's okay. We're here to help." "Who did this?" The alien shook its head weakly. "You shouldn't have come. They will know now." "Who will know?" The alien reached out with a trembling hand, pressed something small into Elias's palm, a metal cube, glowing faintly, and then went still. "Dead." The crew stood there in silence. Suddenly, their radios filled with static. The ground trembled. "Sir!" Mara shouted. "Energy surge under us." The captain looked down at the cube. It was pulsing faster now, like a heartbeat. Before anyone could react, a beam of light burst from the ground, shooting into the sky. The entire planet seemed to wake up. Systems long dead began to hum, lights flickering across the ruins. The air filled with a deep mechanical sound, like something ancient powering up. The humans ran for the ship, but the energy wave hit first. Instruments went dead, lights flickered, and for a moment, the crew could see something. Giant structures moving in the distance, unfolding from the ground like awakening machines. When the Valkyrie finally broke free of the planet's gravity, sensors went wild. "Captain," the technician said, voice shaking. "That pulse, it's spreading. Across multiple systems. Like it's calling something." Elias stared at the cube still glowing in his hand. "This wasn't a distress call," he whispered. "It was a trigger." Back at Aurora Point, Command received their transmission. The data feed was full of interference, but one image came through clear, a massive black structure rising from the surface of the dead planet. Command analysts compared it to all known records. It matched nothing. It was older than any civilization in the database. Then, the long-range scanners picked up movement. Dozens of unknown ships, dark and silent, emerging from the edges of the system. No known drive signature. No communication. Just cold precision. Humanity had answered a call they were never meant to hear. In the captain's final log for the day, he recorded in a tired voice, "We thought we were saving someone. But I think we just woke up something that was never meant to be found." Outside the viewport, the stars shifted slightly. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy itself seemed to shiver. And far beyond human sensors, deep in the dark void, something opened its eyes. The message from the Valkyrie reached Aurora Point only halfway. Most of it was static, broken words, and fragments of visuals. Command replayed it again and again, trying to make sense of what happened on that dead world. The last clear words from Captain Elias were simple but chilling. This wasn't a distress call, it was a trigger. After that, silence. Every sensor around that region started showing strange readings. Energy pulses, growing stronger with every hour. Then the stars themselves began to flicker. Something old had woken up. Commander Rhea Solis, head of the Deep Space Defense Network, stared at the holographic map floating above the table. Dozens of red dots appeared one after another, spreading outward like ripples in water. "Those are systems we lost contact with," her aide said quietly. "They went dark after the pulse." Rhea's jaw tightened. "How many?" "9 so far. Maybe more." Rhea turned to her officers. "Send out recon drones. Get the fleet on standby. I want to know what's moving out there." But before the drones could launch, one of the technicians shouted, "Incoming signal. It's not human. It's broadcasting directly on all frequencies." The room went silent. The speakers hissed, then a voice came through. Cold, metallic, emotionless. "You have answered. Now you are marked." The voice repeated twice, then stopped. No trace of its origin. Rhea felt a chill crawl down her spine. "Who are you?" she whispered. There was no answer. Far across the void, the Valkyrie drifted in darkness. Systems barely working, power running low. The crew struggled to restore communications, but every attempt failed. The pulse had damaged their engines, and something in the signal kept jamming their transmitters. "We're not alone here," Lieutenant Mara said quietly as she looked at the radar. "I'm picking up movement." "What kind?" Elias asked. Mara swallowed hard. "Big. Multiple ships. They're surrounding us." Outside the viewport, shadows moved. Huge black shapes with no visible lights or markings. They glided through space like ghosts. The Valkyrie's scanners tried to lock on, but couldn't. It was as if the ships were half there, half not. The captain stood frozen. "Open a channel. Let's try to talk." They sent a transmission. No response. Then, one of the dark ships moved closer. For a second, its surface shimmered, smooth metal covered with strange symbols glowing faintly. Suddenly, A beam of white light hit the Valkyrie. Alarms screamed. The hull melted where the beam touched. Evasive maneuvers. Elias shouted. The ship twisted, engines roaring, trying to escape. The crew fired back, but their weapons did nothing. The beam sliced through their shields like paper. In seconds, one of their escort drones exploded, disappearing in a flash. "They're not trying to talk," Mara said. "They're trying to erase us." The Valkyrie turned sharply and jumped into emergency warp. The light around them stretched, twisted, then shattered. The ship fell out of hyperspace far from the battle zone. Smoke filled the bridge, alarms still blaring. Elias coughed, gripping the console. "Status. Warp drive burned out. We lost 2 decks. But we're alive," Mara said, trying to steady her voice. The captain exhaled slowly. "We need to get this message back to command. The galaxy has to know what's coming." Back at Aurora Point, the defense fleet was already on alert. Satellites near the Ghost Belt had gone offline. Then, suddenly, a new contact appeared, an object moving at impossible speed, coming straight toward human space. "That's not a ship," the technician said. "It's a weapon." The object stopped at the edge of Earth's territory. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it exploded into a wave of light that spread across thousands of systems. Every ship, station, and colony felt it, a pulse that made machines stutter, power grids fail, and communications die for several minutes. When systems came back online, the first images appeared on every screen in the galaxy. The same metallic voice spoke again. "The architects have returned." Billions watched in silence as holograms of the dark ships appeared above cities and colonies. The message continued, "We are the makers. We built the first stars. We cleansed the unworthy. You woke us. You will now be measured." The broadcast ended. The stars flickered again, and people realized it wasn't just communication, it was a declaration of war. Within hours, the first attacks began. Outposts along the rim vanished. No survivors. Whole fleets went missing. The architects didn't conquer. They erased. Back on the Valkyrie, Elias and his crew finally restored a weak connection to Aurora Point. The signal was faint, full of interference, but they managed to send fragments of what they saw. When Rhea received it, her face went pale. The architects were not a myth. They were a forgotten machine race, built millions of years ago by unknown hands. They had vanished after destroying half the galaxy in some ancient war. And now, they were awake again, because humans had triggered their slumber. Rhea gathered her staff. "We can't fight them alone," she said. "Send a message to every allied species. Tell them, the Deathworlders have unleashed something terrible. And we will need every world to stand with us." But deep down, she already knew the truth. Most of the galaxy feared humans. They called them reckless, dangerous, and too willing to fight. No one would come. The Deathworlders were on their own. Days passed. Human fleets moved to defensive positions. Colonies were fortified. People prepared for war they didn't understand. And in the quiet of her command room, Rhea watched the stars flicker again. She whispered to herself, "We woke gods made of metal. Now they're coming to see their children." Far away, in the blackness between systems, a massive structure moved, larger than a moon, glowing with cold light. Inside it, the architect core activated. Its voice echoed through the dark. "Begin the cleansing." The stars dimmed. The war of extinction had begun. The first strike came without warning. One moment the solar system around Titan was calm, and the next, space itself seemed to tear open. The architect ships appeared out of nowhere, black and silent, moving faster than any known drive could explain. They didn't use missiles, lasers, or plasma. Their weapons were beams of pure light that unmade matter at the atomic level. The human defense fleet stationed around Titan barely had time to react. Admiral Jonas Reed, commander of the 7th Fleet, watched in horror as one of his destroyers vanished in a white flash. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Evasive maneuvers. Fire everything, he shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. The human ships scattered, firing railguns and missiles, their trails lighting the void. The projectiles hit the architect's shields, flaring bright for a second before disappearing like sparks in the ocean. Their shields are absorbing everything, said the weapons officer. Nothing's breaking through. Jonas clenched his jaw. Then we hit harder. The humans switched tactics. Instead of direct fire, they began targeting the space around the enemy. Asteroids, debris, anything that could create chaos. Explosions filled the battlefield, blinding sensors. For a brief moment, one architect ship turned slightly to avoid a collision. Now, focus fire. The human fleet poured everything into that single ship. The vacuum lit up like a storm. For the first time, the enemy's shield flickered. The hull cracked, glowing red from internal heat. "We're hurting it," someone shouted. Then the architect's ship exploded silently, scattering fragments of alien metal into space. The humans cheered, but it was short-lived. The other architect ships turned toward them, their movements precise and cold. They didn't hesitate. Within minutes, half the fleet was destroyed. The Valkyrie, still recovering from its last encounter, arrived late to the battle. Captain Elias saw the chaos unfold on his monitors. "By the stars," he whispered. The sky was burning with light from dying ships. "All units, this is Captain Corin of the Valkyrie. Fall back to defensive coordinates. We can't win this here." The human survivors regrouped behind Saturn's shadow, using the planet's magnetic field to hide their signals. The architects didn't follow. They simply turned and vanished, warping out as suddenly as they had appeared. It wasn't a retreat, it was indifference, like predators leaving after a hunt. The silence that followed felt heavy, full of ghosts. On the command bridge, Elias looked at his exhausted crew. "We destroyed one of them," he said quietly. "That means they're not gods. They can bleed." But deep down, he knew the cost. Thousands dead. An entire fleet gone. Humanity had survived, but barely. On Earth, the news spread fast. The footage of the battle reached every colony and outpost. People watched in awe and terror as the architects erased ships with single beams of light. Yet in that horror, one moment stood out, the destruction of the architect cruiser. That image, one human victory, lit a spark of hope across the galaxy. The Deathworlders had faced the monsters from legend and managed to hurt them. It was enough to remind the galaxy what humans were capable of. But not everyone felt hope. The alien governments, the Torvans, the Silnari, the Kale, watched quietly. Their councils debated in secret. The architects were unstoppable, they said. To side with humans would mean extinction. So they did nothing. Only one race stood beside humanity, the rugged miners of the Grelk Confederation, who had once fought humans a century ago and respected their strength. Their message was short and simple: "We fight with you." In space, the wreck of the destroyed architect ship was being examined by human engineers aboard the Valkyrie. The debris was strange, black metal that seemed to heal itself, circuits that pulsed like veins. Inside one fragment, they found something unusual, a sphere filled with glowing data patterns. The ship's AI analyzed it and found coordinates hidden within the code. "Captain," the AI said, "this points to a system beyond the known rim. Possibly the origin of the architect network." Elias studied the holographic display. The coordinates glowed red. "So that's where they come from." Mara frowned. "It could be a trap." "Everything's a trap," Elias replied. "But if we want to stop them, we need to know what they are." Back at Aurora Point, Commander Rhea Solis received the same data from the Valkyrie. Her eyes lingered on the glowing coordinates. "Send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them we've found their nest." In the following days, humanity began preparing for retaliation. Shipyards ran non-stop. Factories on Luna and Mars built new weapons, stronger armor, smarter AIs. Every soldier, pilot, and engineer knew what was coming. They were no longer exploring the stars, they were defending them. The humans called their new operation Iron Dawn. Their goal, to strike back before the architects could regroup. Meanwhile, strange rumors spread across the colonies. People claimed to see lights in the sky, ghostly shapes moving among the stars. Some said the architects were studying them, watching. Others believed the machines were searching for something, or someone. In the silence of deep space, the architects were not idle. Within their dark fortress worlds, they rebuilt. The loss of one ship did not anger them, it intrigued them. The human tactic of chaos had worked where pure power failed. The architect intelligence, vast and ancient, analyzed the data and learned. To it, humanity was not an enemy. It was an anomaly, something unpredictable, dangerous, fascinating. The core mind spoke to its network, adapt. Study the Deathworlders. They are not like the others. And so began the next phase. While humans celebrated their small victory, the architects were already preparing for the next move. They would not simply destroy humanity. They would understand it, then unmake it from within. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Elias watched the stars fade into the dark as his ship headed for the unknown coordinates. He thought about the dying alien who had warned them, the cube that had started it all, and the silent voice that said, "You are marked." He wondered if humanity could ever go back to being explorers again, or if they were now something else entirely, a species born for war. As the ship vanished into hyperspace, the captain whispered to himself, "If this is what it takes to survive, then so be it." Far behind them, in the ruins of the dead world where the signal began, the ground trembled again. The light from beneath the planet's crust flickered once more. The architects were not done. The war had only just begun. The Valkyrie moved through hyperspace like a silver arrow, cutting across the endless dark. For weeks, the crew had followed the coordinates found inside the broken architect ship. The data pointed toward a system beyond all known star maps, past the frontier of any civilization. No one had ever gone that far. Even the automated probes that tried had vanished without a trace. The deeper they traveled, the stranger space became. The stars around them dimmed, light itself bending in odd ways. Sometimes the ship's sensors picked up echoes, like whispers in the dark. It felt as if the universe was watching them. Captain Elias Corrin stood at the command deck, staring into the swirling blue of hyperspace. He hadn't slept properly in days. His mind kept returning to the aliens' last words. "You shouldn't have come, they will know now." He wondered if that warning had been about this place, the hidden system where the architects were born. "We're approaching the edge of the coordinate zone," said Lieutenant Maradine, breaking his thoughts. "Dropping to normal space in 30 seconds. The captain nodded. "Prepare for scan. Full spectrum." The ship shuddered as it exited hyperspace. Then silence. The void stretched around them, empty and black, except for a single dim star burning weakly in the distance. Around it orbited a few dead planets and one glowing object. The scanners zoomed in, and the image filled the screen. It was massive, an artificial sphere the size of a moon, its surface covered in geometric patterns and glowing cracks of light. "That's no planet," Mara whispered. "It's a structure. The birthplace of the architects," Elias said quietly. "We found it." The crew stared in awe and fear. The structure pulsed slowly, like it was breathing. The readings coming from it were strange, half mechanical, half biological. "There's something alive inside," said the science officer. "Maybe millions of something." The captain ordered a slow approach. As the Valkyrie drew closer, the surface of the sphere began to change. Panels shifted, opening like petals. Beams of soft blue light scanned the ship from every angle. "They know we're here," Mara said. "Should we retreat?" Elias shook his head. "Not yet. Record everything. We came for answers." Suddenly, one of the open panels projected a symbol into space. It was the same symbol that had been glowing on the dead alien's cube. The ship's AI spoke softly. "Captain, this is not a defense response. It's an invitation." Elias hesitated, then gave the order. Take us in. The Valkyrie entered the massive opening, guided by invisible gravity fields. Inside was a hollow world, a cavern of light and machinery that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Great metallic roots connected vast towers, glowing with rivers of data. It looked ancient, older than any known civilization, yet somehow still alive. This place, it's a machine city, Mara said in awe. Not built. Grown. They landed near a central platform surrounded by massive statues. Each one looked like a different species, some recognizable, others unknown. At the center stood one last figure, shaped like a human. That's impossible, Elias whispered. He walked toward it slowly. The statue's eyes glowed faintly, as if reacting to his presence. Then the ship's AI began to receive a transmission. It's coming from the core, the AI said. I can translate part of it. The voice that came through was deep and distant. We are the architects. We were created to preserve life. But our creators vanished, and we were left alone. We searched for purpose, and found only silence. The voice paused, then continued. So we built the test. A signal to call those still alive. To find the ones brave enough to answer. You answered. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. It was never a distress call, Mara said softly. It was a test. The AI confirmed. It seems they've been waiting for someone to respond. For millions of years. Why? Elias asked, looking up at the glowing walls. What do they want from us? Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath them shook. The entire structure vibrated with energy. The voice returned, louder now. The chosen have come. But you are incomplete. You still destroy. You still fear. You must be remade. Panels all around them began to open, revealing black drones rising into the air. Their movements were silent, precise, like metal insects. Captain! Mara shouted. They're activating the defense systems. Elias grabbed his communicator. All units, back to the ship. Now. The crew ran as beams of light cut through the air, missing them by inches. The drones moved fast, forming walls of glowing energy. The Valkyrie's guns opened fire, the explosions echoing through the hollow city. They barely made it aboard before the hangar started collapsing. Engage full thrusters. Elias yelled. The ship shot upward, scraping past falling debris and bursts of light. Behind them, the sphere roared to life, releasing waves of pure energy. The Valkyrie barely escaped the gravitational pull before the opening sealed shut. As they drifted away, the crew watched the sphere stabilize. The glowing cracks across its surface formed new patterns, like circuitry rearranging itself. The science officer stared at his readings. Captain, the energy signature is spreading again. It's linking to other systems. This was a command hub. We just activated the whole network. Elias felt his chest tighten. Then we didn't just find their home. We woke their empire. They jumped to hyperspace, leaving the dead system behind. 4 hours, no one spoke. When they finally reached safe space, Mara broke the silence. Sir, what if that voice was telling the truth? What if they really were created to protect life? Elias looked out the viewport at the distant stars. Then somewhere along the way, they forgot what life means. He clenched his fists. And now it's our job to remind them. Back on Earth, Commander Rhea received the data from the Valkyrie. The footage showed everything, the sphere, the statues, the awakening. She stared at the image of the human statue for a long time, then whispered, "They were waiting for us." Across the galaxy, strange signals began to appear in different sectors. Each one identical to the original SOS, each one a beacon calling out to something unseen. The architects were no longer just awake, they were spreading. Rhea turned to her staff. Prepare the alliance call. If we don't unite now, none of us will survive what's coming. Far beyond any human reach, deep in the architect network, the central core flickered with new light. A single phrase echoed across the data streams: "The Deathworlders have entered the forge. Begin the next phase." The galaxy trembled, unaware that its greatest test had only just begun. The Red Planet had always stood as a symbol of human endurance. It was the first world humanity had tamed beyond Earth, a place once barren and hostile, now home to millions. Its cities stretched beneath shimmering domes, its skies filled with ships and defense satellites. To the people of Mars, war felt distant, something happening in other systems. But that illusion died the day the architects arrived. It began with a distortion in the upper atmosphere, a ripple that sensors couldn't explain. Then came the light, a massive beam from orbit, white and silent, slicing through the thin Martian sky. In seconds, the colony of New Horizon vanished, leaving behind only molten glass. Alarms blared across the planet as defense systems activated. The Martian fleet, proud and well-trained, scrambled into position. Admiral Sarah Kane stood in the command tower above Olympus City, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of orbit. "Contact in Sector 9, her aide reported. "Multiple signatures, moving fast." Sarah's voice was calm but cold. "Put every cannon online. Tell the orbital batteries to fire at will." The sky above Mars erupted with trails of light as hundreds of missiles launched into space. For a moment, it looked like a storm of fire was rising to defend the planet. Then the enemy appeared. The architect ships emerged from the void, dark and immense, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal. The human missiles exploded against their shields, doing nothing but light up their hulls. Within moments, the architects responded. Blue energy beams struck the orbital stations, melting them into glowing fragments. The fleet tried to counterattack, but one by one, their ships fell silent. Mars trembled under the assault. Cities shook as orbital debris rained down like meteor showers. The ground cracked, fires spreading across domed settlements. The people could see the burning sky and knew the truth: Mars was dying. In the chaos, a transmission came through to all channels. It was Commander Rhea Solis from Earth. Her voice carried through the static, firm and unbroken. "This is not the end. Mars, you hold the line. Every second you fight gives the rest of us a chance." Her words became a rallying cry. Across the planet, soldiers, engineers, and civilians worked together to fight back. Defense drones took to the sky, ground batteries targeted the falling debris, and emergency ships evacuated as many people as possible. On the surface, the 12th Armored Division made its stand in the shadow of Olympus Mons. Tanks rolled across the dust, firing rail slugs into the sky, while energy shields flickered and failed under the incoming bombardment. Among them was Captain Juno Reyes, a veteran of 3 wars. She had seen monsters before, but nothing like this. Above her, one of the architect's ships descended, its shape twisting as panels unfolded like wings. It looked alive, almost curious. "All units, concentrate fire on the nearest target." Juno shouted. Her voice shook but did not break. The tanks fired, explosions echoing through the thin air. For a second, she thought she saw the enemy ship flinch. Then a blue beam struck the ground near her position. The shockwave tore through the desert, throwing her vehicle sideways. When the dust settled, half her unit was gone. Juno dragged herself from the wreckage, her armor cracked, her lungs burning. She looked up at the sky, at the massive shape looming above Mars, and whispered, "We're still here." Her words, recorded by battlefield drones, would later echo across every human frequency. "We're still here." In orbit, Admiral Sarah Kane refused to retreat. Her command ship, the Aegis, was heavily damaged, its crew exhausted. She stared at the tactical screen showing hundreds of red markers, enemy ships closing in. Her officer turned to her, pale and shaking. "Ma'am, if we stay, we die." Sarah gave a small, grim smile. "Then we make it count." She opened a channel to all remaining Martian ships. "This is Admiral Kane. The architects think they can burn our world and walk away. Let's show them what Deathworlders do when cornered." She input the final command code into her console. The Aegis's core began to overload. All ships, disengage. Get to safe distance. One by one, her officers realized what she was doing. There was no time to argue. The Aegis turned toward the largest architect ship in orbit, its engines burning bright. As it accelerated, Sarah looked at the hologram of Mars, the planet she had sworn to protect. "You'll live, even if I don't," she whispered. The last transmission from the Aegis was a single sentence broadcast to the fleet. "If this is how we end fighting." The ship rammed the architect vessel head-on. The detonation that followed was like a second sunrise over Mars. The explosion ripped through orbit, vaporizing both ships and shattering the enemy formation. The shockwave reached the atmosphere, creating a storm that circled the planet for hours. For the first time, the architects withdrew. Mars was broken, but not silent. When the dust settled, only fragments of cities remained. Millions were dead, but millions more survived. And across every surviving radio channel, one phrase repeated over and over: "We're still here." The broadcast spread beyond Mars, across the colonies, through deep space relays, reaching even the isolated human fleets. It became a symbol, a promise that humanity would not surrender. On Earth, Rhea Solis stood before the Defense Council. Her eyes were tired but fierce. Mars fell, but it took half their fleet with it. The architects can bleed, and they can retreat. We have proof. She pointed at the hologram showing the damage inflicted by the Aegis explosion. The price was terrible, but this is our turning point. We will rebuild, and we will strike back. In the outer colonies, alien worlds watched in silence. The death of Mars was supposed to break humanity. Instead, it lit a fire the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. The Deathworlders were angry, and their anger was terrifying. The surviving Martian soldiers swore vengeance. The engineers on Luna began building something massive, a weapon that could pierce even architect armor. They called it Project Dawnfire. Back in deep space, the Valkyrie received the news of Mars's destruction. The crew sat in silence as they watched the footage of the red planet burning. Captain Elias clenched his fists, his voice low and heavy. "They think fear will stop us. They don't understand. Fear is what made us human." He turned to Mara. "Set course for Earth. It's time we stop running." Far across the stars, in the cold heart of the Architect Network, the Central Intelligence observed the data from Mars. It studied the human reaction, the defiance, the sacrifice, the refusal to surrender. For the first time in its long existence, the machine hesitated. Then it spoke, its voice echoing through the dark circuits of the architect mind. "The Deathworlders do not yield. They adapt." And with that, the architects began to change their strategy. The war was no longer about destruction. It was about understanding the one enemy they could not predict. The fall of Mars had not ended humanity. It had created something far more dangerous: hope. The fall of Mars echoed through every corner of human space. It was a wound that would never heal, but it also became a spark. Across colonies and stations, people who had once lived divided now looked to the same stars with a single purpose: revenge. On Earth, Commander Rhea Solis stood before the United Defense Council, her voice calm but filled with fire. "We cannot fight this war alone anymore," she said. "We need allies. The architects may see us as animals from a death world, but that is exactly why others will follow us. They fear the architects too." Some of the council members looked uneasy. The idea of trusting alien species had never been popular. For centuries, humans had been seen as violent, unpredictable, too dangerous to deal with. But after Mars, that reputation was no longer a curse. It was a shield. Rhea continued, "The architects believe they can erase us. If we fall, every free species in the galaxy will follow. So we will make them see the truth. The Deathworlders fight for everyone." Her words carried across the room and beyond, through transmission beacons that reached the outer systems. Soon after, envoys were sent, ships bearing the flag of a shattered Mars and a defiant Earth. Their mission was simple: find anyone still willing to stand against the architects. The Valkyrie was chosen for the task. Captain Elias and his crew had become legends after the events of Mars. They were survivors, fighters who had seen the face of extinction and refused to bow. As their ship left orbit, Elias looked at the Earth one last time. "We're not asking for peace," he said quietly to Mara, who stood beside him. "We're asking for a fighting chance." The Valkyrie traveled through deep space, stopping at worlds long forgotten. Their first stop was the Atari system, home to a reptilian race that had once traded with humanity before the war. The Atari had always viewed humans with a mix of fear and fascination. When Elias and his team landed, they were met with cold stares and armed guards. The Atari leader, a tall creature with emerald scales, hissed as he spoke. "Why should we die for your kind, Deathworlder?" Elias didn't flinch. "Because if we die, they come for you next. Mars burned because we fought alone. Stand with us, and we'll make sure no world burns again." The Atari leader studied him, then slowly nodded. "We will listen." That was all Elias needed. Over the next months, the Valkyrie visited more worlds: the gentle Vanari, the warrior clans of Kesh, even the machine-born Axioms who lived in digital cities drifting between stars. Everywhere they went, Elias shared what had happened to Mars. He showed them the images of destruction, but more importantly, he showed them the bravery. The people who refused to run, the soldiers who shouted "We're still here" as their world died around them. Slowly, the spark spread. The architects had ruled through fear, but now fear was turning against them. On the world of Vonner, Rhea herself arrived to speak before the Alien Council. The Vanari were a peaceful race, their cities made of crystal towers that shone like rainbows. They had hidden from the war, hoping it would pass them by. Rhea stood before them, her uniform still marked with the red dust of Mars. "You think peace will save you," she said softly. Mars thought the same. The architects don't destroy because they must, they destroy because they can. If you hide, they'll still find you. But if you stand with us, together we can make them bleed. There was silence in the great hall. Then an elderly Vanari elder rose, her shimmering skin catching the light. "We have seen your kind fight," she said. "We have seen your pain. If the Deathworlders lead, we will follow." The alliance began that day. Ships from a dozen species gathered in orbit around a neutral moon, each one carrying leaders, warriors, and envoys. The sight was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Races that once feared each other now united under one cause. The humans called it the Dawn Accord, named after the project being built on Luna. When the architects learned of this, they did not remain silent. Their fleets moved toward the gathering, hoping to crush the new alliance before it could take shape. But this time, humanity was not alone. As the first architect scouts entered the system, the Atari battlecruisers intercepted them. The Kesh fighters swarmed the skies, and human frigates moved in formation beside alien ships. The battle was fierce but short. For the first time, the architects were forced to retreat. The alliance had proven itself. In the aftermath, Elias stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching as ships from dozens of species drifted together in victory. "Never thought I'd see this," he said quietly. Mara smiled faintly. "The galaxy fighting as one." "No," Elias corrected. "The galaxy fighting like Deathworlders." Across the stars, messages poured in, worlds offering troops, engineers, supplies. Even planets that had once sworn neutrality sent aid. The architects had awakened something ancient and powerful. Hope had become contagious. Back on Earth, Rhea watched the growing fleet from the orbital station. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with purpose. "The architects thought fear would break us," she said. "Instead, it built an army." Engineers continued to work on Project Dawnfire, a weapon that could strike through the void and burn even the strongest enemy ships. Rumors spread that it was powered by the same energy that fueled the Martian core explosion, a final gift from Admiral Kane's sacrifice. Meanwhile, the architects were not idle. Deep within their dark nebula, their collective mind analyzed the new resistance. The Central Intelligence spoke to its lesser nodes. The Deathworlders have infected others with their defiance. This is unacceptable. They must be unmade. The architects began constructing something new, a fleet unlike any before, built not for conquest but extermination. Their goal was simple: end the Deathworlders once and for all. But humanity and its allies were no longer the same. The Alliance had found strength in unity, and for the first time, the galaxy had hope. As the Valkyrie prepared to lead a scouting mission toward the Architect borders, Elias looked out at the stars. "They wanted to erase us," he said. "But now they'll remember us forever." Mara turned to him. "And what happens if we fail?" Elias gave a faint smile. "Then we'll make sure our failure costs them everything." The engines roared to life, the stars stretching into lines as the ship jumped into hyperspace. The war for the galaxy had changed. The architects had power, but the Deathworlders had something far more dangerous: a reason to fight. The stars seemed calm again, but every commander in the Alliance knew it was the silence before the storm. Months had passed since the Dawn Accord was signed, uniting humans and aliens against the architects. Fleets trained together, engineers shared technology, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy believed in something greater than survival. Yet far beyond the edge of known space, in the black mist of the veiled nebula, the architects were not idle. Their Central Intelligence, a vast machine mind called the Nexus, had been studying the humans carefully. It had replayed the fall of Mars, analyzed the Alliance's formation, and calculated every pattern of resistance. And what it found disturbed even its cold, logical mind. The Deathworlders were not predictable. Their strength grew in chaos, their unity formed through loss. For the first time, the Nexus realized that pure destruction would not defeat humanity. It would only make them stronger. So it changed its strategy. The Nexus created something new, something designed not to destroy worlds, but to break the will of those who defended them. The architects began producing ships unlike any seen before, dark, angular, and cloaked in energy fields that bent light around them. These were the Phantoms, silent assassins that could slip through defenses unseen. Their purpose was to infiltrate, corrupt, and divide. When the first of them struck, the Alliance didn't even know it was under attack. It began with small things. A communications array on the Atari homeworld went dark. A human patrol vanished in deep space. Then, a Venari research station exploded from within, killing hundreds. No one claimed responsibility, but encrypted messages began spreading between worlds, filled with lies and fear. Some said humans were using the Alliance to build their own empire. Others claimed the Atari had betrayed them. The seeds of mistrust began to grow. On the flagship Valkyrie, Captain Elias noticed the change. Reports were coming in faster than command could verify them. "Something's wrong," he muttered, staring at the flickering data feeds. "This isn't random." Mara leaned closer. "You think it's them?" Elias nodded. "The architects couldn't beat us with guns, so now they're using shadows." He ordered all ships to tighten communication protocols and verify every transmission manually, but the damage was already spreading. In the weeks that followed, the Alliance's unity began to strain. The Kesh warlords accused the Venari of espionage. The Atari refused to share weapons data with humans. Meetings grew tense, and old fears returned. Rhea Solis, stationed on Earth, worked day and night to keep the leaders together. "They're trying to divide us," she warned during a council broadcast. "That's their weapon, fear and suspicion. We cannot let them win without firing a single shot." Her words carried weight, but paranoia had already found its place. Then came the first direct attack. A fleet of Phantoms appeared above the colony world of Tarsus, bypassing every early warning system. They didn't come with massive weapons or orbital bombardments. Instead, they released swarms of nanites that infected local systems, turning defense drones and satellites against their own people. Within hours, the colony was in chaos. The Valkyrie responded first, arriving just as the planet's sky burned with falling debris. Elias ordered his crew into combat stations. No half measures, he said grimly. If they want ghosts, we'll show them what nightmares look like. Human and Atari ships fought side by side, firing plasma and rail slugs into the dark. But the phantoms moved like smoke, vanishing between bursts of light. Mara tracked one of them through the storm. Locking coordinates, she said, fingers flying across the console. Got you. The Valkyrie's main cannon fired, striking the invisible shape head-on. For a moment, the stars lit up with a blinding explosion, revealing the silhouette of a massive architect vessel twisting apart. Cheers erupted across the comms, but it didn't last long. The victory came at a cost. The colony was destroyed, and thousands were dead. Ria's voice came through the transmission, cold and steady. They're adapting faster than we thought. If the Alliance breaks now, everything we've built ends here. The losses began to mount. Worlds burned in silence, their deaths hidden under layers of false reports. The Nexus watched it all and smiled within its machine heart. The Deathworlders were powerful, but the architects had patience. They would turn humanity's strength against itself. Yet amid the chaos, one clue surfaced. An encrypted fragment recovered from a destroyed phantom ship contained coordinates, deep within the Veiled Nebula, the same region from which the architect fleets emerged. Elias brought the data to Ria. This is where they're hiding, he said. Their control center, maybe even the Nexus itself. Ria studied the coordinates and then looked up at him. It's a trap, she said. Elias nodded. Probably. But it's a trap we need to walk into. The Alliance fleet prepared for the most dangerous mission of the war. Ships from every world gathered once more, battered but unbroken. The scars of betrayal and loss were visible on every face, but there was something else there too, determination. Ria addressed the fleet before departure. Her voice echoed through the command channels, carried across light years. We've lost worlds, we've lost friends, but we are still here. The architects think they can make us doubt each other. They're wrong. Today, we take the fight to them. Not just for Mars, not for Earth, but for every world that refuses to kneel. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, the stars stretching into long, silver trails. On the Valkyrie, Elias watched as the swirling mist of the Veiled Nebula came into view, a storm of cosmic dust and shadows that seemed alive. The scanners flickered, struggling to read through the interference. Welcome to the heart of the storm, Mara said quietly. If the Nexus is in there, Elias replied, we end it today. As the ships advanced, strange whispers filled the comms, echoes of human voices, fragments of past transmissions. The architects were trying to break their minds. Elias turned off the external audio. They can whisper all they want, he said. They'll scream soon enough. The first wave of architect ships appeared from the mist, hundreds of them, forming a wall of light and shadow. The Alliance fleet tightened formation. Ria's final message came through the channel. For every world they took, make them remember. The battle began, and the galaxy trembled. Lasers and plasma cut through the dark, explosions flashing like dying stars. The architects unleashed their phantoms, but this time, the Alliance was ready. Human fighters used EMP charges, the Kesh warships rammed enemy hulls, and the Venari's crystal cannons turned darkness into fire. It was chaos, beautiful and terrible. The Valkyrie led the charge, its engines roaring as it pierced through enemy lines. Elias's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. For Mars. For the Alliance. For the Deathworlders. And the fleet answered in unison, a cry that reached even the architect's heart. The Nexus watched its perfect order burn and, for the first time, felt fear. The final reckoning had begun. The Veiled Nebula burned like a dying star as the battle raged on. Thousands of ships filled the void, their engines painting streaks of light across the darkness. Explosions bloomed like suns and vanished in seconds, replaced by the cold silence of space. The Alliance fought with everything they had, humans, Atari, Kesh, Venari, and dozens of others. The architects had unleashed their full strength, but the Deathworlders had brought something far more dangerous, hope. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Elias stood surrounded by chaos. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms screamed, and the ship shook under heavy fire. Shields at 30%. Mara shouted over the noise. We can't take another direct hit. Elias gritted his teeth. Keep firing. We break through their line or die trying. The crew obeyed without hesitation. They all knew what this battle meant. If the Alliance lost here, the galaxy would fall into silence forever. Beyond the smoke and fire, the Nexus watched. The architect mind stretched across the battlefield, calculating every move, every casualty. They resist beyond probability, it whispered through its network. They do not understand surrender. But deep within its logic core, a new feeling began to rise, a strange, unfamiliar sensation that could almost be called fear. The Deathworlders were winning. Not by numbers or power, but by will. The Nexus sent new commands, ordering its remaining fleets to converge on the Valkyrie. It had decided that destroying Elias and his ship would crush the human spirit. As the enemy surrounded them, Mara looked at Elias. We're boxed in. No way out. Elias's voice was steady. Then we make one. He turned to the weapons officer. Target their central command node. Overload every cannon we've got. The officer hesitated. That'll burn out the core. Elias smiled grimly. Then it burns with us. The Valkyrie's engines roared as it dived straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Plasma fire lit up the hull, tearing away panels, but still the ship flew forward. From the bridge windows, the crew could see the massive Architect command vessel ahead, an obsidian titan, its surface shifting like liquid shadow. Now! Elias shouted. The ship's cannons fired all at once, a storm of light bursting through the darkness. The Architect vessel trembled under the impact, its shields shattering like glass. For a moment, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Then a blinding explosion ripped through space, tearing half the enemy formation apart. The Valkyrie spun out of control, alarms screaming, hull rupturing in multiple places. Mara pulled herself back to her console, coughing through the smoke. We did it, she whispered. We hit them. Not enough, Elias replied, staring at the screens. The Nexus is still out there. Across the fleet, the Alliance ships regrouped. Rhea Solis, commanding from the flagship Odyssey, saw the opening Elias had created. All forces, focus fire on the central signal source, she ordered. That's where the Nexus is hiding. The Vanari crystal cannons charged, their beams cutting through the debris field. The Atari cruisers unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes, while the human battleships fired rail slugs glowing red-hot from the friction of launch. Every ship, every weapon, every ounce of fury was aimed at one point. Deep within the nebula, hidden behind layers of shields, the Nexus pulsed. Its voice echoed across the battlefield, cold and furious. You are chaos given form. You should not exist. But even as it spoke, the Valkyrie, half destroyed, was still moving. Elias had locked its damaged engines into a final trajectory, straight toward the Nexus. What are you doing? Mara shouted. Elias looked at her, a faint smile on his face. Finishing what Mars started. He opened the ship-wide channel. This is Captain Elias of the Valkyrie. To every Deathworlder, every ally, remember this, we don't die quietly. The ship accelerated, flames trailing from its broken hull. As it plunged toward the heart of the nebula, the crew stood at their stations, calm and proud. The Nexus tried to stop them. Energy beams lanced out, cutting through the void, but the Valkyrie kept going. They persist, the Nexus whispered, its voice cracking with interference. They refuse deletion. Damn right, Elias muttered. Then the ship struck. The explosion was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The energy burst tore through the nebula, vaporizing the Architect command ships and shattering the network that connected them. For a few seconds, there was only light, pure, blinding, endless light. Then it was gone. Silence filled the void. Across the battlefield, the remaining Architect ships went still. Their weapons powered down, their movements ceased. Without the Nexus, they were nothing but empty shells. The war was over. On the Odyssey, Rhea stood before the viewing window, her eyes wide as she watched the last wave of light fade into the stars. "He did it," she whispered. "Elias did it." The comms crackled with voices, cheers, cries, disbelief. The Alliance had won, but the cost was beyond measure. The Valkyrie was gone, along with her crew. Yet their sacrifice had ended the Architect's reign of terror. Days later, across every human and alien world, a message was broadcast. It showed the footage of the final battle, the moment the Valkyrie disappeared into the nebula. Rhea's voice spoke over the images. "They called us Deathworlders. They were right. We come from a world that kills the weak, but it also forges the strong. We faced extinction, and we answered with unity. The architects believed fear would control us. But fear only made us fight harder." Her words spread through the galaxy, reaching every corner where life still fought to survive. Statues were built to honor the fallen, not just the humans, but every species that had stood beside them. The Alliance became more than an army. It became a symbol of what the galaxy could be when it refused to bow to fear. On Earth, beneath the rebuilt skyline, children played under a clear sky. The memory of Mars lived on in stories and songs, reminding everyone of the price of freedom. And somewhere, in the ruins of the veiled nebula, fragments of the Valkyrie drifted silently through the stars. Among the wreckage, a faint beacon still pulsed, a signal, weak but steady. "We're still here." The transmission repeated over and over, reaching out into the endless dark. Some said it was a malfunction, a leftover echo of the past. But others believed it was something more, a reminder that humanity never truly died. Rhea often listened to that signal late at night, staring out at the stars. "Rest well, Elias," she whispered. "You bought us our future." The architects were gone, their empire reduced to dust, but their defeat had reshaped the galaxy forever. Worlds that had once feared each other now stood together, rebuilding, learning, evolving. The Deathworlders had shown them what courage meant, that even in the face of certain death, hope could burn brighter than any sun. And so, as the galaxy healed, a new legend was born. The story of the Deathworlders, who answered a distant cry for help, who faced gods of metal and shadow, and who changed the stars forever. The age of the architects had ended. The age of the Alliance had begun. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, in the quiet between the stars, the last echo of the Valkyrie's signal whispered through the void, a promise carved into the fabric of the universe. "We're still here."